Maybe we're just a little bit obsessed with making them look a certain way because like I've been doing family photos for so long, like outside of doing them on a wedding day, that I have like little things that I love to tweak. I'm hoping that these tips will help people in terms of understanding that this doesn't need to be a stressful part of the day if they just sort of follow some of these tips. Today we're going to be chatting all about small details that can have a huge impact on your wedding day. And this is going to be good information, I think, for new photographers and clients. I hope that it is something that you can hopefully bring into your business if you are new to shooting weddings, but also just a good thing for clients to be able to have as well, just so that they have this information in their repertoire.
Things can run late, things can happen that you don't prepare for, so it's good to at least know that these are possible things that could go wrong or right and kind of play around that.
We've just learned from experience.
Definitely.
Right? Like these are things that have happened to us, or we just see kind of being repeated time and time again at each wedding. And I hope that somebody can walk away feeling like, okay, these professionals who've done over 300 weddings, like if they can give us any tips and tricks, these are the ones that they need to walk away with thinking like, okay, I should be ready now.
It's just there's so many little things that you can play around, but it's so hard to know what's going to happen on a wedding day. But these are kind of the boiled down, I don't know, like top 10 we're going to get through.
We just had a lot of crazy experiences. Really, that's what it comes down to, right? This is just putting our experience out there so that people can hopefully learn from our mistakes or just things that have happened to us.
Just having a smoother day is always a bonus, not only for your vendors, but for yourself. Also making sure that nothing is missed on the day. Little details that can have a big impact on the final product. So either your photos and videos. For example, having, fake flowers versus real flowers is not something that you may consider, oh, they look real enough, but sometimes you can just tell there's that little details in the flowers that make a big impact on how you see it in the photos, right? What are your experiences with that type of stuff?
Don't even get me started on real versus faux. I love real flowers. I obviously understand that budget concerns means that sometimes faux flowers do have a spot, I think, in a wedding day, but I think that there's value in understanding like that there is a difference. Some people are like, no way, there's no difference, you can't tell. If there's blue roses in your bouquet, we know, like that's not real. Those don't exist, right? So to me, I think when you go faux,
Go faux,
make sure that you're choosing something that maybe is like not going to be seen up close. That I think is like the one recommendation that I have for if you're going to go that route. And then also see if there's ways to mix in some real stuff in there. Now I've seen bouquets that are absolutely stunning and they have like a bunch of real flowers and even some fake ones in there because maybe that type of flower wasn't available that time of year. And I get that. Like that, I think that there's validity when it comes to those things, but you really can tell. So my recommendation is that I say to all my couples is that they have real flowers, at least that they're holding, right? Like the ones that they're going to be in photos pretty much from the beginning of the day to the end of the day, have like a real bouquet for you and the bridesmaids. And then even like the little, boutonnieres, those are also great to have real.
Because we're going to take some close-up shots of those. A lot of our really close up, like the hand petting the flowers shots or ring shots. We love to incorporate a lot of those flowers in there, and you can really tell once you zoom in, once you use these macro lenses and get close to tight shots of the diamonds and the rings, you can tell that there's fabric or something coming out of the flowers, or because a lot of fake flowers, when you rent them or buy them, sometimes they've been used before and they reuse them, and that's why they can cut costs, is that the places that rent or sell fake flowers have used them before and they get them back, and sometimes they're like a little bit damaged. It's like micro damage, but once you really get
dirty.
Yeah, it's true. They could get dirty as well. But like you said, if people are holding it, so the bride at the very least, their bouquet is going to be in a lot of shots, and then funnel it down to the bridesmaids and the boutonnieres.
I would say at a minimum, that's what I would recommend. Can get away, like I said, so that you can be more economical. But yeah, that's one of my main things. And then also for the details. Like I love doing detail shots, like with invitations or with the rings or the shoes. And I just can't do it with the fake ones. Like go for that impact, like that impact that the bouquet will have will spread through the entire sort of day, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and like you said, if the arch is something that you want to invest in, it's really big, sometimes those can be quite expensive, or I've seen even a flower wall that's used behind the head table, something like that, where you won't get super close-up shots, but it's nice to see if you're doing a wide of the room, or if you're shooting the couple during speeches or whatnot. It's nice to have it in the background, and it may look really good as long as you don't get too close to it.
Yeah, and like I said, use realistic colors and flowers that exist in nature. That's going to help make them look more natural as well.
Believable.
Honestly, sometimes I go up to real flowers and I'm like, are these real? Like I still have
I always touch the flowers to see, because I'm terrible with figuring out if it's real or not, but once I touch it, you can tell by the texture if it's real.
Up next is the one that makes me laugh and chuckle inside, because with all of our years of experience when it comes to going to weddings, we're pretty good at kind of going to the officiant, especially if we don't know them, and sort of giving them a little bit of a like, hey, just, when are you going to announce the kiss? That's kind of our one question that we always ask. And then the other one is, are you going to move out of the way for that kiss? Because I think that it's not great to have somebody standing behind you. Like, let's just be honest. Like, you don't need to have this like little head sticking out, out of your heads. That's just like, it just doesn't look good. It's not fun. Sure, we can edit it out, but when it comes to things like video, you're not editing out this person, right? I laugh inside because sometimes I've gone up to well-established officiants, and one in particular who we are going to have on the podcast, and I went up to him for the first time and said, can you just make sure you move for the kiss? And I laughed because it's just part of my normal thing to just have that discussion. He kind of laughed back at me saying like, duh, of course I'm going to move. But it's not always been the case. I think that's why I'm laughing, because so many times we've run into the situation, like even just last year, multiple times where they just didn't move. And one of our biggest tips is to essentially wait at least until the officiant moves out of the way before you start kissing, because if your kiss is only going to be 3 seconds long, which is also another tip, then you want to make sure that they fully moved out of the way.
That's definitely a discussion that you should have with the couple as well as the officiant. And you said earlier, we asked them if they're going to move out of the way. No, I think we're going to start telling them, you need to get out of the way to do the kiss. It's really difficult sometimes if you're getting married in a church. You will have to respect that whole scene. Yeah. But I think if it's just an officiant that got hired for the day and it's a non-religious, non-traditional wedding or ceremony, I don't think there's an excuse of not moving out of the way unless things are just getting rushed or the couple just goes in and it's not the officiant's fault. It almost seems like as they're announcing that the kiss is about to happen, they should be already on their way out. Yeah. And if there's a microphone or some kind of stand or anything, take that with you, because there's nothing worse than, sure, they got out of the way, but now there's a mic stand in front of them or behind them, or there's just things in the way, and that also can make a big impact on the photo. Again, your photo, you can edit it, but on video side, we don't have much luck. Or
like a signing table. That's another one of my things, is like moving the signing table out of the way. If they're in a church though, because we've done tons of churches, it's not, and we know for sure that most of the time the priest is just not going to move. What we'll say in that case is that you'll usually do your kiss and then go do the signing. Like in a church, that's sort of been what we've seen as like a standard. If they go to do that, when they go to announce you at the end, you could always say like, hey, could you stand off to the side? We'll do another kiss. I know it's not the first one, but we'll do another kiss so he's kind of like, or she is off to the side. So that this way we can kind of get a first kiss in the church without them being literally like a little bobblehead coming up behind them.
And what really gets me in a church sometimes, especially the Catholic churches, is they sit down on chairs. And sometimes those chairs still stay there, even for the first kiss. So that's another thing where we've had a chance to talk with the best man, the maid of honor, whoever's there that's close by, and before they announce the first kiss, please remove the chairs out of the way. So that's another tip. If you're getting married in a church, and you don't want these chairs
Oh,
in your first kiss.
Blocking your entire dress, right? Like, let's just be honest, it blocks the whole dress.
And even editing, even AI, it doesn't recreate your dress behind the chair. So unless you're going to be, I don't know, I've seen what AI can do when it doesn't know what to do, and
it just won't work. Yeah. So I 100% agree. That is such a good tip when it comes to that. So making sure the officiant moves. If not, look at doing a second kiss and seeing if they'll stand to the side or whatever. And I feel like that's worked out really well for us.
It's a good compromise, right? Like, you may not get it the first time because of whatever factors, but we're pretty open to coming up and saying, hey, during the first kiss, this happened. Would you want to recreate it without? And sometimes they say no. Sometimes they're willing to go the extra mile and do it for us.
Next up is detail shots, the importance of having things ready ahead of time. This can save so much time on a wedding day if we're not running around looking for all of the pieces that you want to have captured, right? So not only just for the women, but for the guys too. If they have shoes or cufflinks or maybe cigars or bow ties, whatever, they want to have that captured, that all needs to be ready. And I'm talking not just like, okay, it's still in the box, it still has all the wrapping paper in it, it still has, you know, the shoelaces are undone or stickers on the bottom. Like all of that it's not just, it's prepping that as well, because if not, what happens is you hand me a box with hopefully everything in it that I need to capture. If all of that needs to happen, or I have to tie the shoelaces, I have to pull out all the stuffing, I have to peel off the stickers or open bag, all of that takes time. And if I only have like 15 minutes, let's say, to capture it, it's gonna eat into that, right? I have kind of like a workflow that I go through with details to kind of get hopefully a decent sort of flat lay together. Not that all photographers do flat lays. They're still going to do these things, right? They're probably going to make sure that the shoelaces are tied or like pull the stuffing out because they can't take a photo of it. All of these things apply to the girls too, where that all needs to happen for your own shoes. And even the jewelry sometimes. It's, you know, I have to take the tiny little price tag off the bracelet, the tiny little price tag off the necklace, and then, you know, the earrings. And so like that all takes time. So having all of that sort of prepped in advance, and sometimes it's even where they have like 10 boxes. So now I'm like, okay, open this box, open this box. Like it takes a lot of time. So personally, I like it when it's kind of in one box, and it's divided up in a way that it's going to take me 15 minutes to get it all ready to go before I even get to start taking photos of it.
That is really important because it just expedites the process of doing the details, which is a big part of us and our workflow. Like you said, not all photographers do that, but we know that a lot of the people that hire us love it because it captures all of their details in a flat lay. And if we have to spend 10, 15 minutes getting it all ready, the thing that I've run into in the past is all the details may have been prepped, but there's like 2 bracelets or 2 different kinds of earrings. And how do you know which one of those are going to wear on the day? So that's another way that you can speed it up, is if maybe you decide what you're going to wear. Sometimes they're just unsure of what they're going to wear that day, and that's why they kind of threw it all together. But then how do you know which ones to use at what point? Again, now we're going through double the amount of photos, trying to swap them out just in case they use this one. So that's another way you can kind of speed it up. But it doesn't just apply to the details. I think also if you're shooting the suits the guys are going to use, or even on the dress side for the women, the bridesmaids, take the tags off, take all the extra little...
The hanger things.
Yeah, the hanger things that are on all of those little things can really speed it up. If you don't have scissors on the day of it, not all venues carry scissors in like their getting ready spots, especially hotel rooms that we have to get into. So we bring scissors with us because we know that that's going to be an issue. But if you're getting married in your go bag, scissors are going to be really important to at least, if that doesn't get done beforehand, that you can do it on the day of.
Probably be a good gift to give people. Just give them scissors, 2 pairs, 1 for each location. Scissors is definitely one of the things. A steamer too. A steamer is always a good thing. Some venues offer having those in the room, but even sometimes we've been to hotels that didn't even have irons or steamers and stuff.
Yeah.
So don't rely on them, and you want to make sure that you're doing all of the steaming and stuff like that. This is another big tip that you'll hear from hair and makeup. You want to be doing all of that before you do your hair and makeup. You know, like you shouldn't be planning to steam your dress like 15 minutes before you get into it. It should all be happening the day before, if not days before, if possible. That's kind of like the night before task that people need to be doing, is cutting off things, hanging things up, and steaming everything, so that this way we're not running into those situations.
Yeah, not only dresses, but robes, especially if you're doing satin robes or
Cotton even, too, or pajamas.
And especially they're usually folded in a way in a bag, like air pressed, and then you open that up and it's just full of wrinkles. And if you're like, oh, I'm doing robe shots and popping champagne with my girls in the morning, they put that on and it just looks awful.
It's what my nightmares are made of.
So that's another tip. If you're looking at doing robes, please steam, iron, get that done the day before, and just hang them up.
Our couples know, because I tell them. I'm like, my biggest pet peeve is stuff like that, right? If you are giving it as a gift, because I know that that's a popular one, do it the day before.
That's right.
Do it the day before, right? Like, do it the day before, get them out, get them steamed up. What my nightmares are made of is wrinkly pajamas and robes. You can't fix that. You know, be like, oh, you can Photoshop it. No, we can't just Photoshop it, okay? I'm not going to Photoshop it out of 100 photos, out of 8 bridesmaids' robes and pajamas. No. You can steam it.
If you have personalized like champagne flutes,
Ooh.
Don't use them until we get there and shoot them, because it doesn't look the same if you've used them to do mimosas or whatever drinks in the morning, and then you go to do the champagne and they're like, oh, we have these like little glasses, but then you have to wash them, and you can't wash and dry them so that they look brand new. So just wait until we get there to use them. Bring, a Solo cups or something that you can use.
Get a Sharpie, right?
Yeah, exactly, in the morning, and just wait until we get there to photograph it. It just looks way better, because when there's little water droplets all over, sure.
Lipstick, right?
Yeah, lipstick. Yeah. And have you even seen it where they get gifts beforehand? Again, this is another whole tip. And then one of them just forgets to bring it on the day of. Yeah. So you have like 7 people and there's only 6 cups or whatever it is. And they're like, oh, well, it's just like we opened it before and they just forgot to bring it. Just keep it all together. You just got to do that, because especially if it's important to you on your wedding day, there's nothing worse than having 5 of something, especially with the guys too, if they have flasks with their names on it or whatever. Yeah. There's so many little things that you could forget, and it's so easy. So make sure that you just keep it all together, nicely packed and ready to go.
Another one, just because we're on it, oh my gosh, I think we could go just a whole episode on just the prep. If they haven't tried on their suits until the day of. This has probably happened to us more times than we can count, where something doesn't fit. We've had rental shoes be completely the wrong size, rental pants, rental like jackets that just literally didn't fit the groom. So definitely trying them on. I always try to remind my couples, like as we're building a timeline, that they should do this. But we've had a guy wear jeans because he didn't have, like, the pants just didn't fit his legs and he couldn't get them on. Like, they just literally wouldn't go up past his quads, because his quads were massive, which, it sucks, right? So luckily they were blue suits and he had blue jeans.
Yeah.
But still, being the only guy wearing jeans, like, it's a story, it's funny, but definitely not the vibe you're going for. Especially when you paid for it, right? Like, you paid for it.
That's true.
So definitely trying them on, making sure they fit, so that way they can running around happen before the day of.
Yeah, another thing that you can steam or iron beforehand, especially on the guy's side, is the pocket squares. Ooh. That's another one that if rented or if you purchase it, it always comes in a little bag all folded up. And then depending on how you're gonna style the pocket square, you might see creases. So it's really important to iron that stuff. Yeah. Iron out those details.
And learn how to fold them and learn how to do a tie. How many times are we gonna go to a wedding and nobody knows how to tie a tie? Oh, it's so painful when that happens, because sometimes we have enough time for it, right? Like, sometimes we've been very good about saying, okay, guys, I want you like almost dressed fully before we arrive, because we're kind of in and out of there in 30 minutes. If they're not fully dressed, then of course that eats into it. And then when they don't know how to tie a tie, like, sometimes it's funny, but sometimes it's not, because we're just like, okay, now this is going to take another 15 minutes. It's just eating into that time. So again, if you don't know how to tie a tie, then have a beer drinking tie party. I don't know. Just do something so that this way you can learn how to do it. You're all going to be pros, or designate somebody who's going to do it. I don't know if you remember the wedding we shot in the fall, but there was a guy who was like an expert at doing like bow ties and like little details. details because he worked at a suit shop. That was probably the easiest wedding for us because he just like took care of everyone and it was perfect. And I honestly wish that he was at every single getting ready because it would make life so much easier for everybody.
I mean, even if one person knows how to do it, it takes time to tie 5 ties, especially everyone's torso length is different. So it's really hard, even though you know how to do your own tie, to know how to do it for every single person that's there. True. But it is time consuming. Bow ties are even more crazy if you can watch a tutorial, and that's what we've done in the past too, is pull up a tutorial on how to do it, and then everyone would go and be able to do it themselves.
All of these things can really affect, you know, like we've already talked about like 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there, right? Like if you only have 30 minutes scheduled to do something and 15 minutes of it is taking care of tying a tie, picking stickers off or cutting things or steaming things, like these are all important details that really will save you time and money, right? Because now instead of paying for the photo video team or whoever to be there longer, they're going to be able to do what they need to do and do it in an efficient way where they're not going to be running over in time.
And nothing feels better as a vendor when you arrive there. Everything just goes so smooth. Everything is pre-done. You're in, you're out, and then you have additional time. And it's not like we just sit in our car and go, okay, well, we have 15 minutes to kill. No. Let's just sit here. We get to the next location even faster, even earlier, and it allows us to get more photos, more coverage. Maybe it's getting to the venue a bit faster so we can get the drone up, so we can do some detail photos of what's there. So really, you're only helping yourself when you help us.
The next one that is definitely probably one of the major pain points in a wedding day has to be family photos. We've been lucky that we've kind of figured out a system that works really well. We're always tweaking, we're always fine-tuning this, but it definitely is something that I think couples get nervous about or feel anxious about, and even photographers, I'm sure, like going into them, it can be a little bit overwhelming. There's so many little things that we do that are so important to us, not necessarily just from our experience. We've seen that it doesn't really matter necessarily to other photographers when we've been like the video team. Maybe we're just a little bit obsessed with making them look a certain way because like I've been doing family photos for so long, like outside of doing them on a wedding day, that I have like little things that I love to tweak. I'm hoping that these tips will help people in terms of understanding that this doesn't need to be a stressful part of the day if they just sort of follow some of these tips.
And I think it's important that the couple is on board with us giving these directions. If they're also endorsing, you need to put your hands in your pocket, you need to do this, no purses, no drinks, no sunglasses. There's so many little things that we can tweak so that it looks a lot more consistent when you have all of your photos together. Other photographers, as we did video sometimes, and as a videographer, family photos aren't the most exciting part to put in a video, so we don't care as much when we do that part. And so I'll always approach the other photographer and say, hey, do you want me to help get them signed, like in a line, hands in pocket, whatever? And sometimes they just go, no, I just take them as they go, you know. It could be an arm around the shoulder, it could be their hands are out here, the sunglasses are on.
They're all staggered.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many little things that can, well, from our perspective, can really enhance or make the family photos better. But I thought we were actually going to go and talk about how it takes a certain level of authority to be able to manage and set all these people. And I think that's something that we've learned over the years, is the amount of confidence that we have coming in, grabbing a mic from the DJ, start yelling over the speakers, everyone, we're doing family photos. We need Jessica, Robert, this, Michael, this, all over there right now. And okay. I think it's part of our brand that we really do, you know, take command at that point.
To me, I think, yes, I have taken a few microphones and I have gotten things organized that way, and it does make me laugh. It's not what I would like to do, but at the same time, it just makes so much more sense. I feel like my voice doesn't carry very well. I mean, everybody kind of says that to me, but I do try and bring out like my mom voice and that authoritative positioning that I try to take at that point, because I also don't want it to take forever. Like, I think that's where that comes from, is that, you know, especially if there's a long list, right? Like, I don't recommend doing more than like 20 combinations, like maybe 25, because really for every combination that you do, it's about a minute And that's like a minute of people like listening to what we're asking them to do for each photo, right? Sometimes we can even schedule up to like 3 minutes per photo, because especially bigger groups, those take a little bit longer, right? Where like somebody went to the bathroom, or somebody has to go get a drink, or somebody went to the car. Like there's always something, right? So to me, family photos can be stressful because of just trying to manage all of these people. And people really just want to like chat and mingle and have a drink or have some food. And so it really is like important for you to understand that it can be the most stressful time, but there are ways to make it less. And so some of the things that we do particularly is we get our couples, 8 weeks before the wedding to make a list. And this list can be divided up into different ways. It can be divided up into immediate family. Like if you're doing a first look, you could do those photos with immediate family before the ceremony.
Yeah,
so
like
sort of
pre-ceremony family photos and then after ceremony family photos.
Yeah, so you can get like through some of like you with your mom and your dad, you with your husband, new husband and your mom and your dad, right? Like you can kind of do some of that before the ceremony to kind of make that after ceremony time not so tedious. If you're not doing a first look though, then all of that has to happen kind of after the ceremony. You can do some, hopefully, immediate family, like you with just your mom and your dad before, but not always, right? That's not always the case. So in our opinion, having that list, creating that list ahead of time, and then also taking that list and going to the players that you think like are going to have opinions about this list, right? Like, because there's nothing more stressful than a mom or an aunt coming up and being like, well, I really wanted a photo, I really wanted to have a photo with you, or me and my boys, or whatever. They're not going to do that if you've already brought that list to them and you've said, hey, these are the combinations I want to do. This is what's important to me. Do you have any opinions? Because if you have the opinions, let's talk about it now, because I don't want to talk about it on my wedding day.
Yeah, nothing's worse than ad hoc adding 5, 10, 15 combinations on the day of, because we do spend a lot of time building the timeline based on the information that we have before the wedding. And when afterwards the ceremony is happening and people are like, oh, well, I want one with like my, the bride, her mom, and all her sisters, the aunts and uncles, whatever it is. And sometimes if it's not on the list, they didn't know they were going to be part of a photo and they've gone off the cocktail hour. Yeah. And now we're waiting. Oh, we want this photo, but this Joe Blow is not here. Yeah. So we have to wait for them to come back, and it starts getting into everything. Yeah, exactly.
If there's important people that you want to have, this is also an option, is to tell them in advance, hey, this is the list. If you want to have a photo with us after this, at cocktail hour, if you're going to cocktail hour, or maybe later on in the night, each table coming up for a photo with a couple, that's like a cool option as well. Make use of that nighttime activity after the ceremony. Instead of it being, again, 25 combinations, let's make it like 4 to 6. So you do all of mom's side, all one group photo, dad's side, one photo, and all of that is done in 4 images. And then if you have grandparents, maybe you're doing a couple with them if they weren't there earlier, and then that's it. Like, I don't see the point of doing every single family or every single person unless you have like unlimited time and you really want to spend all of your cocktail hour doing that. But we're not seeing that as a trend. Right?
Yeah, I think we've spoken about it where it's been less family formal photos has been trending this year or last year, and we hope to see that going into the future. But even with a smaller amount of family photos, being tactical about when they're going to be, also where they're going to be. You can rely on us, the photographers, to come up with the location, but if you have something in mind, that's obviously worth discussing before the wedding as well. And you can even turn it into 3 separate chunks. So there's pre-ceremony, after ceremony, and then if you have groups of friends, like work friends or high school friends, university friends, whatever it is, and that can be later in the evening, even after the table game if you wanted like specific ones. There is some dead time in between speeches when they bring out courses at dinner that you can fill that with the photos with friend groups and things like that.
People get really photoed out, and that's where I think having a second shooter comes in handy. Second shooter can go around and get photos of your guests. Photo booths have really grown in popularity because, again, it's an opportunity for your guests to go and get photos, and you get them there, right? But if you're not doing that and you want your photographer to capture it, then those are important things that you should be talking to them about. Is that, hey, I don't want my second shooter just standing beside me. Like, what does your second shooter do during cocktail hour when you're getting family photos? Like, in our case, we send them to get candid shots, right? Like that is, they're getting candids, but they're also going up to couples or families and saying, hey, do you want a photo? That it is part of what we do because we want but you're not always my second shooter. So, but it is a nice thing for them to do, and hopefully gives, guests some nice images as well.
Maybe you're being too nice. Sometimes you can just say, this is our list, and we're not diverging from this, So depending on what kind of person you are and how relationships are with your parents, you may want to ask them to add anything, or you just might want to just tell them, this is my wedding and this is what's going to happen, and stand firm.
Yeah. So don't ask.
No expectation, no disappointment.
On that note, it's so cute as well after the wedding, when I see all of these couples starting to follow us and they use their profile picture as the photo that we took of them.
Yeah.
Like, think about that connection, right? There's so much value in it. It's cringy, but you got to embrace the cringe. You got to.
How is that cringy?
It's cringy because it's weird to go up and ask people to take a photo, right? Like, you might not think so, but I know from talking to our second shooters that they're like...
Oh, you're talking about like as a vendor, as a photographer, going up to people and say, hey, I'm going around taking photos of people. Do you want me to take a photo of the two of you?
It can feel like cringy. It can feel like, like this is awkward.
Oh, I love it.
I know.
I like thrive in it. I'm like, yes.
I know we do because that's just us, but for other people, I know that that's going to feel cringe.
Yeah.
So embrace the cringe because it is worth it to build your business, okay? Because your potential client, like those clients already booked you. You're already there. You're already capturing it. They love you. All of your potential clients are sitting in that room.
Yeah.
That is literally your next client. So
on that note, the bridal party.
Yes.
That's a good one, especially if they brought their spouse or brought somebody
gold.
to, every single one, bridesmaids, groomsmen, go up to them and get a photo of them with their partner, with their family, whatever it is, because they will remember you.
Oh yeah, every single time I do that, they're like so appreciative that we went out of our way to take a photo of them with their person, right? Because kind of what happens if you're a guest at a wedding is that if your person is in the wedding party, you are kind of left to your own devices for the entire day up until maybe dinner time. Even at dinner, you might not even be sitting with them.
Yeah, they could be at the head table and you're just at a guest table.
So the only time you get to hang out with your person the entire day is really kind of maybe at cocktail hour, as long as you did all of the photos beforehand with your bridal party. And then again, maybe after dinner once the dance floor starts. So it's nice to have like...
It's kind of sad to think about it, eh?
I know, right?
Yeah. I think most people are actually going away from having their full bridal party at the table with them.
I think that better too.
For that fact that they would just get to enjoy being with their partner, sit at least through dinner.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I see both, right? Like we've seen both where it's like the massive tables, and then what happened at a friend of ours that we did is they actually had their wedding party table was bigger, but it was enough to include all the spouses. Do you remember that? So that was kind of a neat way too of like including them. That was fun for us. They kind of had their own little sweetheart table, and then there was like a
is it called a king's table?
Yeah. And then funny enough, I was taking the photos that day, and you were in the wedding party. That ended up being where I got to sit beside you during dinner. So
do you think maybe we had some influence on them making this king's table thing?
I don't think so.
No?
I think they decided to do it on their own.
Interesting. Well, shout out to Kenny and Jess.
Yeah. We love you. Yeah.
Speaking of creating a timeline that really makes sure that you have the most out of your experiences, including some buffer time. But it's really important because if anything does run late, if
something goes wrong, right? Like if something goes wrong on a wedding day, I think having extra time is going to allow for us to deal with whatever is going on, right? Like we posted something the other day where it was a champagne bottle that exploded all over a groom right at prep. And luckily had a planner who could kind of deal with it. And there was a bit of time between the first look and things so they could hair dryer it. There's been so many things. I think we could probably do a whole podcast episode on things that have gone wrong on a wedding day. Things like a shuttle's not showing up on time. You need to have buffer time because sometimes those schedules are so tight that there is literally no room for error. Grandma doesn't show up on time. We can't wait 30 minutes for her to show up to start a ceremony.
Especially if you're late in the season and daylight's running out and you have to get through the ceremony and it's like, oh, well, we can't start the ceremony without grandma and now we have to wait 20 minutes. That pushes everything back and now you're stressed for time when you have to squeeze all of the photos right after ceremony.
There are times where like you need to have buffer time, right? Like I did a conversation with a client the other day where she was talking to me about her schedule, and she's like, yeah, we'll just do the first look like 15 minutes before the ceremony. And I was like, but you can't, like we really can't do the first look for 15 minutes before, because where are we going to do it? People are going to be around, guests show up early and everyone's going to see you, right? Like if we're outside, you've picked a beautiful venue to be outside at, we're not going to be able to do your first look with everybody hanging around. You have to know these things, and that's why having buffer time, we're not going to be able to really be doing photos outside at most venues leading up to the ceremony because guests are arriving, right? You need to know that like 30 minutes-ish before the ceremony, either you have a spot where you can be hidden from people, or you're literally hiding so that nobody sees you. So a lot of people don't realize is that like that buffer time is kind of built in. You need to have it, right? So that this way, like imagine you were planning to do all your family photos up until like 4 o'clock on the dot. Well, it's just not gonna make sense. So because they're gonna be seen. And as long as you're okay with being seen, then that's fine. But most people are not. 9 times out of 10, brides mostly don't wanna be seen before the ceremony.
Well, it's a natural instinct to say, okay, I booked these vendors for this amount of time, and now let's just pack as much as we can in all of these little increments so that we can get the most out of the day.
Yeah.
But you'll find that doing that can also be a negative impact on your timeline and on your experience on the wedding day as well. Because I would say 15 minutes between, from start of day to ceremony, having this 15-minute at least buffer of somewhere. A lot of the times you can include it in travel time if you're going from prep to where the ceremony is going to be.
Always 15 extra minutes, always. Because you have to count in, gotta go pee, or I forgot something inside, or I didn't lock the door. Traffic. When you get there, like not being able to get out of the car right away. Like there's so many things to consider when it comes to that, or finding parking. We've even had it where the limo couldn't fit in a certain area, so they had to go a different route to kind of drop everybody off.
More free time that you two can spend together. Yeah. And I think that is overlooked, time that you can spend together even before the ceremony if you've done a first look, or between the cocktail hour and dinner. Because if you don't have any time when you guys can spend the time together, your whole day is going to go by, and then the only time that you get to sit down and really talk to each other is like at dinner time, which speeches are happening, so it doesn't really allow for that. And then it's like, oh, it's the dancing time, and you look around and you go, I haven't talked to anyone or done anything. I haven't been social. I just invited 100 people, spent $300 a plate, and I barely said hi to them.
Next up is an emergency bag. Now we've already talked about our number one thing that you need to have on a wedding day is scissors. Scissors are definitely something that everybody needs to have multiple pairs of. Even like a speaker, like if there's no speaker in the space that you're gonna be at, it's so nice to have like music playing. Gum, I think that's always a good one too, right? If you've just been eating and like don't have time to brush your teeth and you're talking to all these people, I think gum is a really good one.
I would say breath mints instead of gum, because especially when you're taking photos, gum is a pet peeve. Like you don't want to take photos of somebody.
True. Deodorant is probably one of the things I think that people always are like, oh my gosh, I didn't put on deodorant today. You need to have some kind of a comb or brush that is going to work well for that. So talk to your hairstylist about what that looks like. Luckily, at one of the last weddings that I had of the year last year, my bride had glam waves, and honestly, she just moved too much. She was definitely not like a candidate for these ones. Like I love her to death, but I must have brushed her hair like 15 times because she was just so moving, and like her literally would turn into a rat's nest because she was just so bubbly and bouncy. You cannot do that when you have that type of hair because it just starts to like twist and become a knot. And so a hairbrush would be really good. Hairspray is always a good one.
Yeah, or gel.
The other thing that always gets forgotten, and sometimes people don't realize because they're paying to have their hair done, is a curling iron. Like if you have, you're doing this little piece that's curly in the front and it's a hot day or it rains or whatever, you need to have a curling iron if you want to touch that up. Really, really important to bring one, or a straightener, something just to have to be able to fix those pieces that fall. Bobby pins, I would say at a minimum, those are some of the things that you need to have.
And on the guy's side, I know we talked a lot about the girl side. And on the girl side, I just want to add like boob tape. I obviously don't use it a lot myself, but I've seen it being used. Or if you have Band-Aids even that can go in the back if your high heels give you a hard time. There's a lot of like little things that you can add. Oh, do you have something to add?
Tide pen. Oh, how many
yes.
times have we had to use a Tide pen? Makeup smearing on anything basically is so important to have a Tide pen.
Lint roller.
Lint rollers is also good for the guys.
Big one for the guys.
Yeah, especially if you have pets. Like all the couples who have dogs, you can always tell because there's like hair on stuff. Like not like to a point where you're like, ew, but it's just enough to be like little hairs that just show up. And it doesn't even matter if you were like the cleanest of the cleanest people. That dog hair just
It's like as soon as you bring the suit into your house, it just attracts the hair.
Yeah.
It just has this kind
like,
of
ooh,
static electricity.
a new place to get stuck on.
Yeah, and the hairs just like weave into the fibers and they just get stuck in there.
And I always try and laugh. I'm like, oh, like little Stella was here, you know, like it's like a little reminder, but at the same time, you're like, get that off because I don't want to see that later.
Lip chap, which I think is also really important. A shoehorn.
Yeah.
So not a lot of places have shoehorns sometimes if you really need it. Yes, bottle openers, especially if you're using anything that's corked. Or beer. Yeah, that's right. We've been to a lot of places that didn't have just like a beer opener.
Yeah, like hotel rooms, right?
Yeah.
Or you're waiting for the hotel to bring you one and it's going to be like 20 minutes and you're like, okay, we don't have 20 minutes. So yeah, having somebody that can pop the bottles.
And then a spare shirt.
Oh,
That's a big one too. Especially if it's a hot day outside, not only for yourself, but for all your groomsmen,
And
any
shoes.
guys, that's
And
going to be
shoes.
just nicer, comfortable shoes
Comfortable
to
shoes
get
to
into.
change, yeah. If you're not used to wearing dress shoes all day, like you're a construction worker or something, and you're just not used to wearing that, definitely need to have spare shoes.
And then on that note, our own emergency bag as photographer and videographer,
Yes.
where we bring a whole new change of clothes because not only do we get sweaty if we get rained on, there's a lot of different ways. Have you even heard of some getting sprayed by skunks? When they've gone out into the forest to do shots and they get sprayed by skunks. So, get changed out of that. But I remember going to weddings where we were in a church in the middle of July and we just got drenched because there's no AC and I didn't have spare clothing at the time.
And
so
we
I
got
had to,
rained on that day too.
yeah, we did. And I had to shoot the rest of the wedding with a cold, damp shirt.
Yeah.
And that was not fun.
Yeah, I always bring like extra like lipstick and like mascara in case literally I get rained on. Lip chap for sure, breath mints for sure, bobby pins. And then for us too, it's about snacks. I think that's one of the things we talked about that we learned this year is to bring like snacks so that we can have something to eat in between, right? Or having water. I'll never forget that same wedding. We also didn't bring water and it ended up being like a 40-degree day and we did photos outside for 2 hours. We got poured on with rain and I remember just being like so thirsty because we were so hot. So we always have a cooler that we bring with us as well that has full of water, full of some snacks. Sometimes we even offer them to the couple, right?
I was going to say, these are also transferable to the couple needs to bring this kind of stuff.
Yeah, but we've helped couples out like with water or like a protein bar because they're just starving. There's a million things that go into a wedding.
I know.
That's all I'm realizing right now is I'm like, I am so sorry to put all of this on you, but there is so much to know.
And as much as you think you're prepared, there's always one thing that you could have brought that would even bring you to the next level, right?
Like I've literally sewn dresses. I've done people's hair multiple different ways, whether it's been curling it, brushing it, hair-spraying it. Like I've fixed a dress where the strap has like actually ripped
safety
off.
pins. Safety
pins are
is a
good, but
big
I mean,
one.
in this case, I literally sewed it. Yeah. Rings, even, right? Like that was a new thing now where people forgot the rings. Some
What
good tips.
about another copy of your vows or speech printed off and put in this emergency bag in case it gets lost or you forget it somewhere? Because that's happened before. Where I remember one specifically where they gave it to the officiant. And it was a vow book that had little ribbons on it. She put it in her purse, zipped it closed, and then couldn't unzip it because it got caught on the ribbon. And she was freaking out, this officiant, because all their vows was written on this thing. And she ended up having to cut her purse open to get the vow books because she was so freaked out about not having the vows that they had written into these books. So it's just nice to have other copies because like how are you supposed to anticipate situations like that?
And you're not going to pull out your phone. Yeah, that's another one. Having things printed for speeches and for your vows on a nice looking piece of paper. There's nothing more annoying than when somebody pulls out their phone. I really don't like it when people read off their phone. I really hope that that is something that people will take going into their wedding day, is like no phones need to be visible during any time of the wedding day.
I think there are situations where the phone can work if you're at a podium and the phone is there, but in point form, so that you're not literally reading off the phone.
But the worst is when they hold it, right?
Yeah,
They're
they hold it
holding
up. And sometimes the phone can interfere with the wireless mic.
Oof.
And I've heard that before, where then there's this ringing, and it's because the phone, like Bluetooth or Wi-Fi or whatever it is interfering with the wireless mic, and that, yeah.
Yeah, so no phones, just print them out. Everybody needs to print them out. Nobody should be writing their speech the day of anyways, okay? Groomsmen. And so make sure that that's happening beforehand and you print it out.
Some of the biggest assets that you can have on a wedding day is a day of coordinator, because they bring so much to the table that you don't have to do it yourself. Even vendors arriving and asking, hey, where do I set up? What power outlets can I use? Where can I find this? It's just really nice to have that point person that's gonna know about your wedding day. And most of the time they've had experience working at this venue or working with specific vendors, that they have this relationship and it's easy for them to coordinate it, compared to you getting married and having to deal with any issues that come up on the day.
That is not even talking about all of the things that go wrong and who has to deal with it, like outside of our job, right? Like every other vendor also has all of these same experiences of things that happen and go wrong, right? Like think of a catering company, think of the DJ, like you just said, trying to find outlets, you name it, the florist coming in and needing to get water if there's no water. Like there's so many little intricacies that can happen, right? Like we're not even seeing all of these things. However, in the past we've been brought in, right? Like we've been brought into some of these problems where it's like somebody fainted or whatever because nobody had water all day, right? Like, and it was a 40-degree day and like a groomsman passed out, right? Like things like that. Like who's going to deal with that? Like who helps this guy? Like is the bride and groom going to now like go away from their schedule and delay everything to help this guy who passed out?
It's definitely not going to be us, because we're also busy trying to stick to this tight schedule to get all these photos done.
Right. So like I'm just saying, like sure, maybe you can go do that, but who's going to be that point person, right? I'm chatting with somebody right now who they're getting their ceremony at one place, they're doing their reception at another, and I know for sure that this venue we've never worked at without a planner because it is so complicated. There's so many little things that go into it, and I kind of chatted with her saying, hey, you should probably consider having a person. She's like, oh, well, don't worry. The DJ is going to tell them where to go. The officiant's going to tell them where to go after this part. And yeah, everything will be fine. And it's just like, are they though? Like, have you confirmed this? Like, is this just you assuming? I don't know, right? Like, you need to have somebody. Like 100%. If you don't have someone, it's going to end up either being us, which takes time away from you, or it's going to be you. Like you're going to go into the kitchen and tell them it's time to serve dinner. Or you're going to go up to the person and say, hey, we have to start a speech now. Like, do you want to be on your phone looking at a timeline on your wedding day? Probably not.
And this becomes even more important when you're doing like a private estate or a venue that is just a rented space and everything else is brought in. A lot of the other venues that obviously run full-time into the wedding business have a day of coordinator or someone that is supposed to help you with all of that stuff.
But not really, right? Like you might have a day of coordinator included, and the venue that I'm talking about has a day of coordinator included, but they don't time the timing of the ceremony. They don't tell guests where to go. They don't cue people when they go for speeches. Their main job is to make sure that the chairs get moved if they have to be moved from the ceremony inside or whatever, that whatever they need to set up in part of their contract is done. And they are also there to make sure that the dinner is ready to go and that food and drinks are ready to go. They don't care about the rest. In this situation, yeah, sure, you have a coordinator. It is not somebody who's going to help you with all of these other factors that can play a role in that.
Another important person that is part of your wedding that you get to choose, or you can hire, I suppose, is the MC. The MC is going to announce a couple different things throughout the day, usually starting with the grand entrance. They give like their own little speech about how they know you typically, and then they would announce the couple, the bridal party, to come in, and their job is also to entertain the guests at some level and introduce the speeches as they do, or the events that are going to happen that night.
But we're there as professionals to kind of guide them and say like, hey, you can't like start a speech without letting us know. That's probably the number one thing that we see as a problem with an MC is they'll just start talking and they haven't even told us.
And then we're eating dinner, we got a spoon of soup in our mouth, and then we can start hearing something going off, and we got to sprint over there and make sure that we capture it.
And give them the devil.
Yeah, exactly.
You know better.
That was strike number 1 and 2. Yeah. All right.
Next time, do better. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I definitely had a rough day for some reason. I just maybe had no patience that day, and I really gave him an earful of, "You'll never do this again because
And then I did it too. So yeah, they don't do it after that.
Yeah, and MC's usually somebody like a friendly friend or a guest or something, right?
They're not that mean, but kind of.
Well, it's because it's just we've been burnt in the past, and really it's not that we're not going to get something and it's going to be a huge value to us. It's the couple that's really going to be the loser in this situation.
Of course, their final product's not going to be full or complete, right? Like I said, the audio is recording, like that's just our fail safe, but I mean, it's gonna be a black screen until we start the camera. A big thing that we've seen that can really have a big impact, but is a very small detail of the day is, and it always seems to be a joke, which I really hope that people stop doing that, because they're always like, oh, they told me I could only be 3 minutes. The reason we say that is because we don't want you to be 45, okay? Yeah. Like 45-minute speeches do not have a place in a wedding. Like, that is my personal opinion. The reason why I think that is that first of all, it's never planned for 45 minutes. And unless you're going to pay for the couple's photographer, videographer to stay later because
DJ,
you've gone
like
DJ, whatever, right, to go later, I do not think that you should do a 45-minute speech on somebody's wedding without telling them ahead of time.
It's always the parents. I think the parents is typically the big one. They always make that joke, oh, I don't have a lot of time, and then they start with like, in 1988, she was born, and it's like, get to the point, you know? You have 3 minutes, high notes.
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple stories is good, and then, say how proud you are and how excited you are and talk about the new person that's going to be joining your family, and then like, we're done here, right? 45 minutes is just too long. It really is too long. And if you're going to do that, I think you should be responsible for paying the bill for having everybody stay later, right? Again, it's only one day. If you're taking 45 minutes and then the other parents are taking an extra 45 minutes, like that's a lot of time, right? That's like 2 hours of coverage for each of us, and that gets expensive. Plus, you're also digging into the dancing time and things like that. And honestly, people just stop paying attention after like 5-10 minutes anyways. So keep it short, keep it sweet, go sentimental, make it funny, whatever it is that you want, like whatever your vibe is. But it really gets difficult when it's like also, like diverse multi-family. So it's like, parents are split, and now you've got mom and dad on this side, and then you got stepmom and dad or whatever on this side, right? You can also say to them, please just keep it under, like, I think 10 minutes is like honestly the max. Really, it should be more than that.
I mean, we say 3, you hit 5, usually pretty acceptable based on the timeline that we build with even 10 minutes can be a little long, but once you start going over, and I think back to when we're about to do sunset, and then we say, oh, well, we have 5-10 minutes before we go out for sunset, let's do one speech, and then you see the sun setting as they're 10-15 minutes, and it's going down, and all I'm thinking is, no, we're missing the sunset because the speech, we thought we had enough time, and you're just watching it go. And then, well, in the end, you literally just cost the couple some really nice photos and videos because the speech went over, and that's something that's unacceptable.
We've learned that the hard way, and that poor groom, I'll never forget, he said, Bethany, I could feel your eyes burning into the side of my head because the speech went over. Because they were. Like, I was literally like, oh my God, you told me that he wouldn't be more than 5 minutes. We're gonna squeeze it in. Oh my gosh, that was the biggest regret. I don't do that anymore. I do not squeeze it in. I'm like, no, we have 5-10 minutes. No, we're not gonna do a speech right now. We'll go do your photos. And then as soon as we come back from your photos, then we'll do that speech because we are not missing it, right? We don't always get sunsets. I think that's something that we don't talk about enough. You don't always get a beautiful sunset on your wedding day. Yeah. And so when we do get one, you bet your ass we want to be outside and we want to be capturing it and we want to be taking full advantage of it because that is the most beautiful light. Those are the photos that you're going to print and put on your wall. So yeah, we don't want to miss it. So definitely keep your speeches under 5 minutes. If you're over that, I'm going to be mad at you.
After speeches is definitely the time for you to cut loose, get on the dance floor, and tell that DJ to turn it up. But what I've seen in the past is that the dance floor starts and the couple, because maybe that they haven't had a lot of time during the day, is when they start to socialize with everyone. And the dance floor becomes kind of empty.
Yeah.
And it's kind of crazy to me that as soon as the DJ starts, hopefully the DJ is playing something good right off the bat too. I think that makes a big impact. But the bride and groom need to be on there, need to be telling everyone to have a big dance party for the first 30 minutes. Because for us, usually we only factor in 30 minutes of dancing before it's the end of our time, before we leave. And so that is the most crucial time, especially with the high energy videos and photos that we love providing for our clients. They need to be on our team, on our side, to get everyone there and just like have a big party for at least 30 minutes.
Yeah, so that I'm talking brides and grooms on the dance floor, bridal party on the dance floor.
That's a big one.
And getting your parents, those are the people that we've spent the most time with throughout the day. So for us, it's about like, we literally go and grab them and we're like, get on the dance floor. We're leaving soon. So we want you to just like pack it. I mean, I saw something that's pretty cool and I hope we can see this year. So somebody please do it if you're listening to this. It was a like little shot cart, and I think that would be such a cool thing to bring on the dance floor while we're there and just like have the bride and groom hand out shots to everybody and like do a shot on the dance floor together. I feel like that would really just like pump up the party and bring the vibes, right? So anyways, please somebody do that because I think a shot cart would be so cool and to just really get that party vibe going. We hope all these tips were helpful for you, whether you're a photographer, a videographer, or you're getting married, because a lot of these are just experiences that we've had to go through, and we hope that you will learn from them and take at least one piece of advice from them. Have fun because, I mean, it's a party after all.
Yeah.
We're celebrating.
Lots of details, small details, big impact.
And that's what we're all about. High five.
High five.